Hi, ladies. Happy Hoodoo Heritage Month. I hope everyone's having a great month. This is probably one of my favorite months just in general because I love October. I love fall time. The season's changing. I've always loved Halloween. I've always just loved this month. So I'm excited that we are venturing into Hoodoo Heritage Month this month and really getting to know, different backgrounds and different things that encompass hoodoo. So for me personally, I grew up very Christian. My entire family on my mom's side is Christian. They grew up in the church. They lived across the street from the church. They went to church every Sunday faithfully. And so I never really knew what hoodoo was. The most I knew of hoodoo was from watching the movie The Skeleton Key when I was younger, and it terrified me. But it drew me in so much. There was something about that movie that really made me love it. It's one of my favorite movies to this day. And back then I remember being so scared as a kid and not understanding it. And so I had a fear of hoodoo. And it wasn't until I started doing my own research as I got older, learning about, different other things than Christianity, because I would not consider myself a Christian anymore. And I really understood hoodoo, and I hate that mainstream media has made it a little taboo in a sense, but I mean, hey, we live and we learn. But it makes so much sense as to why I was drawn into it for years and who I am. When, with this month, learning about hoodoo and learning about, I know everybody here, probably not everybody, I won't say everybody because we all come from different walks of life, but I know everybody has had different backgrounds and different ways in which they were introduced into magic. And, for me, my family and I have always we were all very intuitive women. We learn about dreams. We talk about different things that happen. My dad's side of the family, he's more of the land. They plant, they grow herbs. My dad takes so much pride in his yard, and he can garden. He knows so much about the land, and I've loved all this stuff from the time that I was little and young. But as I've gotten older and I've really sat with my family and learned with my family, I can understand the power of ancestry and how, for me, it has connected to me figuring out who I am as a woman as I go along my own spiritual journey and path and who I am. So a little bit about me. My dad's side of the family, we are Puerto Rican and Black. And my mom's side of the family, we are Native American and Black. My great grandma was from Barbados, apparently. That's something I recently discovered from learning about history with her. And my grandfather on my mom's side was Lene Lenape Indian, Native American. And he was, we spent summers at the reservation growing up. We would go there and we'd eat food, we listen to stories, we buy the jewelry, we would be just on, there was bison, the bison. I just recall, it's Delaware Indian basically, but I just recall growing up being there and not thinking anything of it other than this is what we did every summer. And then the same thing goes for my dad's side of the family, which is where I resonate more so, I would say, with my Puerto Rican, Afro-Latina heritage. And, my grandfather, my papi, his name was Alejandro. He was my world. He died when I was 8, but he was the person, I would say, that if a man ever loved me, and I know my dad loves me, but that man showed me true, unconditional, heartfelt love. He was what I would want if I, in the future when I get married, I would want my husband to be like. He cared for his family. He sacrificed so much. He truly came here and made a life out of nothing for his kids. And when I say he was my world. He would play with me no matter what, what I wanted to do, we did it. He would sing songs with me. He used to sing and play in a band when he was in Puerto Rico, and he would play music for me. So I'm that's one of the things that makes me feel the strongest to my roots is the music within our culture, as well as, the food. The food is always so rich, so filling, so hearty. It just gives me life and makes me feel so connected to him. I think that, being a Black woman, and Black presenting, I look Black. If you look at me, you would say, oh, she's a Black woman. You don't really know what other cultures I represent. There's some people, growing up, like, they'd be like, oh, what are you? You have, like, you look like you could have something in you. And I just would be like, I'm Black, or I would say I'm Puerto Rican, like, but growing up as in America, I feel like we kind of put a lot of emphasis on, oh, what are you? What, like, oh, you're Black, are you mixed, are you this, are you that, when being Puerto Rican, being Native American, I don't know, I just felt like we were people, Afro Latina, like in Puerto Rico, it's Taino, but like the original, like, Borican, like, Native Americans that were there, the indigenous that were there. And then you had the Spaniards who came, and there were Africans that came. So we have all this blood within us. So even if you look at, like, and I'm going to post a few pictures, but my dad and my aunt, they tell me, like, my grandfather was considered darker for a Puerto Rican. And so, they always were just like, I was like, did you ever feel different from your cousins? Did you ever feel any type of way? No, nobody felt different. I never felt different until I, came to the area in which I grew up in Jersey. And, Jersey's weird because there's places that are very rural. There's places that are very, very, more city, more urban. And so you have a mix of people. But the area I grew up in, I was the only Black girl. And then my best friend, who we both moved there the same year, she was the only, like, full Puerto Rican girl, and so even her, when I talked to her, she's like, I'm Black. Like, she never, she's like, we're Black, like, we never really saw a difference. And that's my best friend to this day. And we are 33 years old. We knew each other since we were 9. And we have, like, the easiest connection, I want to say, because we got it, especially being the only 2 in our grade who were around all these other white children who kind of made us feel like outsiders in a sense. And so even when the first time I ever went to Puerto Rico, to the island, was with her. It was just like, we were young. It was just like the 2 of us and another friend came with us, but we were very young. And I remember talking to my aunt, like, I'm going to the island for the first time. Like, what, like, do I see? Like, where's family? Like, who can I connect with? Who can I meet? And I remember my aunt just being like, oh, like, where are you staying? And I told her I'm staying on the island Vieques. And she was like, oh, just go. You'll find family. You'll connect with people. You'll see them. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, and they were like, the island's so tiny, you'll find her. Like, you'll see her. Your cousin Ida's there. And I was like, okay. So I get onto this island. I'm like trying to find it. Ask my friend's we stayed with my friend's grandma, like her grandpa. And we're like, where is the restaurant El Resuelve? Like, that's where my cousin is. She works at that restaurant. And he was like, oh, you'll see it, like, on the way to the beach. Like, you'll find it. And we're like, okay. Like, so I'm thinking in my mind, like, this is insanity. Like, I'm not going to find this place. And I'm literally driving. We're driving her grandpa's, like, old pickup truck down to the beach. And I turn my head and I see the restaurant. I'm like, oh my God, it's the restaurant El Resuelve. And we pull up to this restaurant. And we walk in and I'm like, oh, is, like, Ida here? And they're like, oh, Ida's in the back, she's cooking. And so they're like, Ida, and she comes out and she just takes one look at me and she starts crying, and she comes up to me and she hugs me and she's saying my grandma's name, and she's like, Lou, Lou, Lou. And it's, for me, it was such, like, a wholehearted moment, because I had just actually, lost my grandma at the beginning of that year, and she was telling me how much I looked like my grandma, and it made me feel so close to her. And then she's like, what are you gonna eat? Like, I'll cook for you. She got us all this food, and the one thing I saw on the menu, like, that stood out to me immediately was pollo guisado, and it was my, like, grandpa's, like it tasted just like how my grandpa makes it. And I felt so in just awe of the island, like, the people, and then we were like, oh, we have to go back to the mainland before we leave. I'm like, we don't know what we're gonna do, because her family lives in Manatee. So she's like, I'm gonna have to get up really early to try to get them to the airport, because she was staying for 2 weeks, my friend. And my cousin was just like, she's like, when you go there, like, my niece is at the house, like, just go to the house, you can stay. She gave us she opened her house to us in, like, an instant. And I felt so full and loved, because, when you, like, family is, like, the fact that family in, like, Puerto Rico would just open their arms to you so easily, That's to me what being a Puerto Rican, being an Afro-Latina, being like, even a person of color. Like, I feel like, and sometimes in the Black community, we don't always get embraced with each other. So this space, the Coven, is a beautiful place because I feel like we come to each other with open arms. But like, we don't always have the family that we need there for us. But, one thing I've learned about being a Puerto Rican woman and, an Afro-Latina woman is like, when you're Puerto Rican, and that's stronger than anything. So whether and don't get me wrong, you get your Puerto Ricans who, don't always like people who are darker, don't always, agree with what you believe in. That's normal. But the Puerto Ricans that I meet, anytime I'm on that island, I feel like I'm home because they automatically pull out the culture from me. There's the food, the music, everything, the times that you spend together is all encompassing in there. And so, this month I've been reading Work and Conjure. And this is the book that I chose, one of the books I chose, because I'm reading a few of them. But one line that stood out to me that he wrote it's about, like, it says service to the ancestors. And it's basically like establishing a relationship with your ancestors is one of the most important things you could ever do. Knowing where you come from, the struggles of your people, and how you overcame carries with it the power to put the same principles to work in your own life, which in turn becomes a potent tool of strength within your work. It also opens the doors of what will come. You see, you need to know where you came from to really know where you are going. And I think that line alone for me truly is what I've been needing to hear, especially, and I'm so grateful for this month and really understanding Hoodoo on a deeper level, understanding, because that's where I've been going. I've always been the grandkid that sat with my grandparents, that listened to their stories, that wanted to know about them, that wanted to know everything about my culture. And I never understood why. And it just fascinated me. I love history to an extent, not everything that's taught in school, because I feel like, a lot has been taken out and removed, but I've always loved history, loved learning, loved getting to know people and what makes up their culture, who they are, but especially my culture. I love hearing the stories from my grandma about her dad and his, him being Native American and working the land. He was a farmer, and, his mom was an Irish woman. So, looking down through the history, my dad's parents, his mom came from North Carolina, and my grandpa came from Puerto Rico, and they worked in a factory. They had their own, they worked their ass off essentially to provide for their kids, and they they had 6 kids, and each one of them is doing amazing in life. We have doctors in our family, we have lawyers, we have my dad, he was a cop for years, but he also did his own landscaping on the side. My entire family, to come from immigrants and a woman from North Carolina who couldn't finish her education because she had to take care of her kid, her younger siblings. And she told me this when I was painting her nails one time. And that's something we always connected with, me and my grandmother. And knowing that they went through all these adversities just for us to be where we are today, it makes me want to honor them so much more, to know that, once you know the struggles that they've been through, you really can overcome that. And, looking at it culturally from anything that in my lineage, where it comes from, whether it's indigenous, whether it's the Hispanic, the Black, the Irish, that's in our blood as well, it's all people who have been oppressed in some way. And I aspire to be my ancestors' biggest dream, to go further. It makes me want to honor them, wants to put myself out there more. Even me just talking right now is something that I've been struggling with for years, but because I'm doing this work, because I'm doing the work within the Coven, and I'm doing this work for myself, I feel so much closer to my family, my ancestors, and I am grateful. So, I don't know necessarily if I should have been talking a little more about the Afro-Latina aspect of my family, but I will say that, family is family, it's on both sides. I have Puerto Rican cousins on both sides of my family, and it's all, you know, to me, what connects us the strongest is the culture, the food, the music, you know, the types of food we eat. It's all hearty. It's all brings us together. It's all warm, you know, feelings. Even like around the holidays, we make coquito, which I can't wait, because this is my favorite time of year to be with my family, Puerto Rican, Black, everybody, because the food is what really connects us and really keeps us together and makes us, you know, we all compete. Like, who can make this like Poppy? Who can make this like Grandma? Who can make this taste like, you know, whoever? And, you know, I think I'm winning in the family right now, but, you know, everybody has something. Like, you know, some of my cousins are really good at the desserts. Some people are better at the authentic Puerto Rican dishes. Some people are better at the, you know, the real Southern, like, food that we love and we just cherish and brings us closer together. So I think being of, you know, all these different cultures really encompass who I am and make me uniquely individual and feel blessed and loved. So I hope everyone has a great month. That's all I got. That's all I can think to say. But that's just a little bit about me and my journey so far. And I can't wait to learn more and see where I go further, especially now that I understand hoodoo a little deeper for myself personally.